With Booking Robot now set up and installed on our test website, we're now ready to add our first times and services. It's pretty easy. Let me show you how to do that.
The first job is to add in times. In the free edition, we have the option of having 2 times. In the full version of Booking Robot, we can have as many times as you want. Let's add in our first time, and we're going to have 10 AM. So we're going to add a label, which can have any text you want, really, but it makes sense to have the time. And then selecting 10 AM from our time selector here, and we can click Save and Close, and we've added our first time. Let's add another time in, and we're going to have an afternoon time of 2 PM. And again, we can select the time in our system here. That's it there. And Save and Close. So we've added the times in for our services. Now we can go back to our dashboard where we can go to Services, and now we can add our first service. Let's click New. We've got lots of different options here, but they all make sense once we go through it. The first thing we need to do is add in a title. So we're going to call it Boat Trip 1. And I suggest any title you do add there is relatively short. Now we've got lots of settings to go through. Published or unpublished is relatively self-explanatory if you were used to working with Joomla. Double bookings. This is whether more than one person can book the same service at the same time. So I want lots of people to be able to book up this service until the capacity is reached. So I'm going to also charge every single person who is included in the booking. So let's say if you have 2 people booking at the same time, well, you'll be charged for 2 people, not 1 person. So multiple chargeable needs to be yes. Service capacity, this is the maximum number of people that can book this service at any one time. So we're going to leave that at 10 for now. And now we've got some price category options. If you have simply one price, well, you can add it there and leave it at that. But we're going to have 2 prices. We're going to have an adult price, and I'm going to charge £20 per person. So we're going to add the label and then the actual time. And now we're going to add in a child price. And I'm going to make it £15. And we'll add the actual price in there as well. Now we have a minimum group and a maximum group. So if you want to set that people can only book a minimum number of people per booking, then you have the control there. So if you want to say a minimum number of 2, it makes sense to choose that option. But for now, we'll leave it at 1 and a maximum, well, 10. The capacity is 10, so we don't want anyone booking more than 10 in a single booking. Now we need to add in a start publish date. This is when it'll start producing dates to be able to book. So I'm simply going to choose yesterday. So it'll immediately start generating dates from today onwards. If you wish to have an end point, you can add that in, but it's certainly not required. An expiry point. Okay, this is the number of minutes before the start time that the service will no longer be bookable. So let's say if you were having a start time of 10 AM and you had 60 minutes set an expiry point, at 9 AM no more bookings would be allowed and the system would not be available for booking. If you basically gives you notice, so you don't get people turning up right at the start time. You can if you want, but it's a good setting to have. I'm going to leave it for 1 hour, that's 60 minutes. Generated dates, this is the number of days into the future that the system will generate dates. So I'm going to leave that at 365, so it'll generate an entire year's worth of dates into the future. If you want to add any notes, you can, but that's all that is. And the last thing we need to do, if we want it to generate dates, then we need to choose which months it should generate dates for. I'm going to select the entire year. And then which days of the week that this service will be available on. He's going to operate every day of the week. And which times will it start each day of that's been selected. And I'm going to have a 10 AM and a 2 PM. And we're going to click Save and Close. So we've added our first service in. Now let's go to the front end of the website and refresh. And we can see it's now giving us the option to choose a date. And there are all the dates from tomorrow onwards for 365 days into the future. Alright, if I were to select a date, it'll let me continue forward by choosing a time. There were 2 time options of 10 AM and 2 PM. Let's choose the 10 AM. And now we can choose our group size between adults and children. There was a maximum of 10 capacity, so that's why it's showing 10 there. So if I click 1, it's giving us a price for 1, and it's saying 1 out of 10 places taken. So let's have 2 adults and 2 kids, and we can see we've taken 4 places out of 10 at a price of £70. So that's our system. We've added times and we've added our first service. Pretty straightforward.